Picture with me a perfect gaming evening. Work is done, pets or kids or other important individuals in your life are cared for, yourself fed and showered. You get nice and cozy in your gaming space with a cup of tea or a beer and a nice chill podcast or YouTube video in the background, and thus you settle in for just a little BG3 before you sleep. This has been my nighttime routine for pretty much since BG3 was released, and it's always just a few small quests. No big deal. Just gotta see what's going on in the Underdark, right? And then you come upon some baddies, and of course you have to see the fight out to the end. And the Myconids have a problem you could probably solve. And what's that funky tower over there surrounded by chasms? And it's 2 a.m., you have work at 8, and somehow you've managed to just one more thing yourself into several hours of BG3 when you meant to spend 1 or 2. But why? What's going on in our brains when we do this? And how can games and game designers utilize that to keep you playing and playing and playing and playing? Hi, I'm Em, and I have a background in social psychology. I love to examine why we do what we do when we're gaming and the science that supports that. I've also spent a truly terrifying amount of time in BG3, like pretty sure I spent more consecutive hours playing BG3 than anything else in 2023. Oops. In the gaming industry, immersion gets talked about a lot. Most games reviews will at some point mention immersion as a factor in a positive or negative rating of a game. Fans of games talk about immersion on Reddit and Twitter and Twitch and YouTube, and the various factors that we feel play into immersion for us. These conversations range from the utterly ridiculous to the very serious. And BG3 is not immune to the immersion discussions. But what is immersion really? We talk about it a lot, but do we actually know the definition? Immersion is now a word that's lost all its meaning for me because I've said it too many times. In one article, published by the USC Engineering Department as part of their student newsletter in 2003, immersion is defined as the process by which a media element entices a person to suspend their disbelief and accept what they are viewing on a screen or a page as actual reality. However, in the world of psychology, what this article is referring to as immersion is often conflated with the concept of presence. Presence would refer to the sense of being in a particular place or time period, or an intimate sense of the nearness of invisible entities, which could feasibly include fictional characters and settings. It also refers to the user's sense of being inside the simulated environment, which is probably the closest to the concept of immersion in popular media and culture. One article that I found within my search attempted to review previous work on immersion and propose a definition of immersion that is theoretically separate from that of presence. In this article, immersion is instead defined as a state of deep mental involvement in which the subject may experience disassociation from the awareness of the physical world due to a shift in their attentional state. The difference is pretty minute, but this helps to illustrate how nebulous the commonly accepted definition of immersion really is. A piece published by The Guardian in 2010 examined this and essentially came to the conclusion that folks might have a very different idea of what immersion is, and to some extent, that definition is not only different gamer to gamer, but individual gamers themselves and the way they interact with games might impact their own perception of immersion. So immersion is a fiddly term. And given that we talk about video games being immersive so much, can we assume that this is why we play for hours and hours and hours when we play BG3? Maybe, maybe not. I took to X, the artist formerly known as Twitter, to get some first-hand understanding of what people mean when they say BG3 is or isn't immersive. And the answers were interesting for sure. If you want to be part of sections like this in future videos, make sure you subscribe here or follow me on my socials. I'll be frequently crowdsourcing some thoughts over the next few months, and we'll be posting about it all over my socials and on that C tab, so definitely if you're interested in this and you want to be part of this kind of stuff, ding the bell! The first thing I wanted to get a sense of was if individual gamers felt the same way about BG3 being immersive, whether they played it or not. People seem to lean strongly toward the game being immersive. People who had played BG3 leaned a bit more towards it being an immersive game, and people who had not leaned a little away from it being immersive, which does make sense because people who have played BG3 have a little bit more experience running around in the game, doing all the things. People who had not played BG3, it makes sense that they would perceive it as a little bit less immersive because of the reasons I'm about to go into here. I do have to take my requisite science education moment to remind everyone that this would not be compelling as a sample in a scientific study. This entire section is included as context as opposed to being an authority on this topic. There are a couple of reasons for this, included but not limited to a very small and biased sample size. This is all people who follow and interact with my artist formerly known as Twitter account. The groups were not balanced, with the haven't played BG3 group being twice the size of the have played. And to be quite honest, I learned a lot about wording and options in terms of social media when I ran this poll, so it may lean towards people who are willing to respond before they see everyone's poll answers. Honestly, on occasion, the game will present limitations that can be jarring. And before you all start yelling, "That's not true!" hear me out. We all just have different specific things that we find more or less immersive. Ones and zeros, glitches, and limitations might break immersion for some. Others might find them funny and part of the experience. For others, the odd computer brain limitations or construction oddities don't really impact immersion at all, and they become deeply immersed in the story that stands behind them, which, anecdotally, is probably where most folks who've played the game for significant portions of time rest. Couldn't be me. I definitely don't have several saves with the pure intent of romancing or befriending someone new in order to learn more about their story. So if the degree of immersion in this game varies so widely, what role does immersion play in the vast amounts of times we spend fighting and talking and resting and fighting again and reminding Astarion, Gale, and Shadowheart that they have legs and can jump, goddammit? Is it truly immersion, or is there something else happening in our brains here? Urban Dictionary defines one more turn syndrome as a condition often associated with strategical games of the video nature. It has destroyed the lives of many, causing sleepless nights and missed job interviews. Symptoms include a detachment from reality, complete lack of time awareness, and an inability to stop mobilizing your forces. Referring to this by the medicalized syndrome is a wonderful example of what was originally named pathological science by the broader scientific community, which has since evolved into the term pseudoscience. This term was coined in the 50s by physicist Irving Langmuir. He called it the science of things that aren't so, which is just such a good statement. Good on you, Irving Langmuir. Typically, pseudoscientific concepts look like they could be medically or scientifically sound, but they actually arose from pop culture, cognitive biases, and use of language as opposed to any more rigorous origins. Pseudoscience also typically has a heavy dose of what we call confirmation bias. People tend to ignore things that disprove a pseudoscientific theory they hold, and elevate things that prove that theory. One example of popular pseudoscience is astrology, or the relationship between the positions and movements of celestial bodies, such as planets and stars and events on Earth, including human life and personality. But Em, don't you repost all sorts of astrology stuff on Instagram? Yes, it's harmless. Leave me alone. For real, if astrology makes you happy and is a helpful way for you to process the world, as long as you're not using it to cause harm to others, you do you. Many of us likely possess some level of pseudoscientific belief, but just be careful. Reading your horoscope over a cup of coffee or scrolling through astrology Instagram can be fun, but don't be asking about people's star signs in a job posting to discriminate. Do y'all want to hear more about pseudoscience? If so, you're going to want to drop a follow because I am going to be having a lot of discussions on this. Come on, do it. You know you want to. The idea is simple. You're always tempted in games like this to keep going for one more round. Just one more thing, you say, as you move to attack another civilization in Civ 4. Just one more day in Stardew Valley, and when you inevitably don't get everything done that you want to, one more to try and knock off that to-do list. Just one more battle, you say, as you trawl the Underdark for loot, and also a place to hang out with some cool little fun guys. Get it? Get it? Fun guys? The problem is that just one more can so quickly become just one more hour, and oh boy, is that a slippery slope in BG3. So if one more turn syndrome isn't truly a scientific concept, is there really any science behind why we keep playing? Are we immersed? Whatever that means? If so, how come people who don't necessarily find the game immersive still keep playing and playing and playing? While the general concept of one more turn syndrome might be a little pseudoscientific, in my humble opinion, games that do this are taking advantage of a very simple and common psychological trick: intermittent reinforcement, or when you don't immediately and consistently get what you want. but you get what you need. To talk more about intermittent reinforcement, we have to first talk about this dude named B.F. Skinner. Burghaus Frederick B.F. Skinner was born in 1904, aka the do cocaine about it era of medicine, and became a prominent psychologist and author in the mid-20th century. If you've taken a Psych 101 class, you've probably heard about good old Burghaus Frederick, usually in the context of his work with getting rats to press buttons for rewards, aka his studies around operant conditioning. Good old BF's work has been the foundation of much sense, and fueled the development of some truly nifty tricks for hacking the human brain. One of them is the idea of intermittent or delayed reinforcement. As the name suggests, in this kind of reinforcement, you don't necessarily get a reward every time you do something, but you know that there's a potential of getting a reward, so you keep going. In BF's work with rats that sometimes got a reward but not always kept on pushing the button for longer than rats who received a reward every time they hit the button. Your brain loves novelty, and the intermittent/delayed rewards create a lot of novelty in the brain. So picture with me, again, the perfect gaming evening. You're on a bit of a difficult battle. You've rolled like poo and been knocked down a couple of times. Normally this would be somewhat frustrating and may even cause some gamers to quit. And that might still be the case for many, but many of us will keep going. Our experience is often that one good roll or strong decision can sway the tides of the battle and give us that sweet, sweet hit of dopamine and serotonin when we're given those intermittent, unpredictable rewards. In this case, the reward is winning a battle or pulling off a wild plan that shouldn't work. Feel free to chime off in the comments and tell me about the wildest successful plan you've made work in BG3, because there are just so many ways to approach every situation, and I'm here for it. Whether you're a rat pushing a button for food or a human person who just realized it's 2 a.m. and you're still battling hook horrors, you're more likely to keep trying when you get those intermittent rewards. Because next time could be the time you down those fuckers and get to loot their bodies or get a little treat, little loot. And your brain will remember that. Allow me to introduce you to your prefrontal cortex, the decision-making and planning part of your brain. She's a little like your coworker who is super organized and never drags in 20 minutes late with a cup of coffee. They're the one who always has an agenda and keeps everyone on track. Your prefrontal cortex has an important role in all of this for the next time that you sit down to play BG3, while the rest of your brain is just fun, nice. Once you've conquered those hook horrors, I can't believe I chose this particular monster to talk about. Once you've conquered those hook horrors, your prefrontal cortex has her work cut out for her. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. The first item on our agenda is to reflect and provide feedback on all of this that just happened. Fun, nice, feel good. So just to confirm what I'm hearing here, we had fun, and it was nice, and we feel good. Ooh, So right before we had fun and felt good, we did this thing in the game, yes? Wonderful. So in future, when we want to achieve this, we should play more? Yeah. Yes? Okay. And thus, your super organized prefrontal cortex notes this for the future. And when you sit down to play next time, it's not just a mess of happy reward brain chemicals because you got to sit down and play. It's a mess of happy reward brain chemicals on a mission to get you that feeling of intermittent reward. What are the most rewarding experiences that you've had in BG3? Please feel free to tell everybody about it in the comments. If you liked this, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button for more. Be kind to yourselves, be kind to others, and I will see you next time. Mwah!